Are we going to do that on this podcast? Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Rock and Metal Profs, the history and philosophy of hard rock and heavy metal. My name is Matt Alschbach, and I'm an associate professor of history at a community college in western Kentucky. To my right is associate professor of philosophy, Dr. Court Lewis, my good friend, colleague, bandmate, and co-host. Both of us are academics, but we are also lifelong fans of rock and metal music. Collectively, Dr. Lewis and I have attended well over 500 rock and metal concerts featuring some of the biggest acts in the business. And Court, I don't know about you, but I've been to over 300 concerts, and I'm only talking about headliners, arena shows. I'm not including bar bands and smaller venue shows.
Right. I mean, I include a couple that I remember, and then I left out. I've been to so many festivals that I mean, they're just.
So you're not including festivals?
Well, I include the festival, but if I saw 10 bands at a festival, I just kind of lumped it in as one.
I see. So I was including festivals. I've seen Metallica at a couple of festivals.
Yeah. No, I used to go to the Jazz Fest a bunch, and of course, those weren't a lot of metal bands there, but I saw tons of bands. And I've been to lots of concerts in New Orleans and whatnot. So that's.
I even included Reba McEntire. Went to see Reba McEntire.
Yeah. I saw Sawyer Brown, Patty Loveless, and Steve Wariner. You know, the guy from Who's the Boss fame. That was actually my first concert. My mother would not let me go to concerts, and so I was dating a girl. And since it was country, and they were playing at really just a warehouse for furniture in Tupelo, Mississippi. So I went with
You went to a concert at a furniture warehouse.
A furniture warehouse, yeah, and with my girlfriend, and Sawyer Brown was really big, and and I knew Steve Wariner from Who's the Boss, and
cool.
Anyway, that was my first concert, and until a few years later when I broke away from home and
got to see some real rock and roll.
Yeah, right. Saw the Grateful Dead and.
Yeah. We're going to approach this show from an academic perspective, but we also want to have fun and celebrate these performers. The show will include music news, current events, and very likely multiple references to both KISS and UFO in nearly every episode because Court and I are massive fans of both bands. We will also have some reoccurring features such as Prove Me Wrong. We'll talk more about that. And then an episode that I'm just springing on you now, or a recurring feature that I'm just springing on you now, Court, called What Has Gene Simmons Done Now?
Oh, okay.
I think that'll be a lot of fun to talk about that.
Because does sound like a fun little segment.
He does pop up in the news from time to time, so.
Yeah.
Including this week, I understand.
Or as he would say, I'm popping up in the news. Oh, yeah.
Well, he's for the wrong reasons this week. He had some kidney stones, as I understand it.
Yeah, right. I mean,
had a procedure.
Rock and roll all night and kidney stones every day, right? I mean, actually, I'm quite impressed, though. The guy's in his 70s. He's on a massive world tour that will probably last until they decide to have another farewell tour.
Right.
But he's up there rocking and rolling with kidney stones. So maybe those growls are real. I mean.
It's possible, yeah. He's never at a loss for words. And he makes the news for the wrong reasons from time to time, so there'll be something to talk about there.
Of course, I once heard that you could avoid kidney stones if you made love enough because it supposedly kept the system clear. I know biologically it's incorrect, but it was a good theory. And I started thinking that, well, that disproves it. I mean, with Gene's record of several thousands.
By his own admission.
Yeah, right. He should not have kidneys if that.
Well, if you've ever seen the interview between Dan Rather and Gene was adamant that Dan know that he's been with well over 1,000 women.
Yeah.
He was really proud of that and wanted Dan Rather to know that.
I mean, he is the modern day Don Juan, right? Which raises lots of philosophical problems. At what point does sex become, monotonous? And so... Who knows, right? That's for another.
Yes, we'll tackle this in a future episode.
Yeah, we'll get under the covers with that one.
All right. We're going to start with a short history of Metallica. Today's episode is about the rock band Metallica, founded in 1981 by Lars Ulrich, when James Hetfield answered an advertisement in the Los Angeles Recycler, which was kind of like a penny saver reader free publication where a lot of musicians would make contact.
Right.
And that
Think
really
Thrifty Nickel, right?
it's
that's the big
precisely
thing
that
now.
sort of thing, yeah. And so when James and Lars got together, they quickly recruited Rob McGovney on bass, Dave Mustaine on guitar. Obviously, we'll probably do a full episode on Dave Mustaine and Megadeth at a future point. And they started out in Los Angeles, the Sunset Strip. They built somewhat of a following, but hair rock was all the rage. Motley Crue was just massive on the Sunset Strip, and so very quickly they relocated to the Bay Area. Their first demo was No Life Till Leather. No Life Till Leather was a kind of like a compilation album. They did that. They also did that couple of songs on Metal Massacre, another of these compilations.
Now, the No Life to Leather just reeks in a good way of Judas Priest. Do you think that was kind of them sitting around saying, all right, how do you want to start out this song? Mm-hmm. No Life to Leather. And I mean, I think that's Rob Halford right there. In my mind.
Precisely. And, both Lars and James had been in previous bands where they leaned a little more towards hair rock and what was very popular at the time before deciding to go in a harder, heavier direction. As I mentioned, they relocated to the Bay Area, where very quickly a gentleman by the name of Cliff Burton replaced Rob McGovney on bass. They signed to independent label Megaforce Records in 1983. The band traveled to New York City to record, where famously Dave Mustaine's drinking was so out of control that Kirk Hammett of Exodus was recruited and brought in to replace him. Hammett had just 1 week to learn the songs and compose solos, which is truly remarkable.
Right. I mean, you look at those dates and you're just like, that has to be a typo somewhere between him coming on, was it, what did you say, March, April, and then they recorded in June or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
A really quick turnaround.
I mean, it was just like, okay, right.
Yeah,
I guess, I mean, if you fast forward to James Hetfield's accident where he was standing in the pyrotechnic.
Right.
They got really lucky there where, one of their roadies, he knew all the songs. And so
that's correct.
It's a good,
and I believe there were actually a couple of times where a roadie had to step in and play guitar where James was just singing, doing vocals. We've heard that a couple of different times. Now, interesting, if you've ever seen the Behind the Music episode on VH1 featuring Van Halen, they talk in quite a bit of detail about how Dave Mustaine was an angry drunk. And by Dave Mustaine's own admission, he was just a furious guy when he consumed excess alcohol.
I don't believe it. Those are just lies.
And I guess they basically packed up his gear and put it outside and locked him out of the studio where they'd been practicing, and that was the end of it. And Dave Mustaine, as we all know, got angrier, became more out of control, and decided to do his own thing. Yeah. It'd
be like if I showed up to work and all my books and stuff were sitting out in the hall, I would be a little grumpy.
Well, and I remember reading that Dave Mustaine has had, I think it's 14 different stints in some sort of drug rehab facility. So he's got his demons. He's a guy who's really struggled throughout his life. And we know that he's struggling now with, I believe it's throat cancer that he's had a diagnosis for. But
yeah, he's got cancer.
Yeah, still.
But he's always made it through, right? He's definitely a fighter, whether you like him or not. I mean,
that's one of the things I love about him, is the fact that he was just determined to succeed and to be successful. And one can make an argument that his body of work with Megadeth is better than that of Metallica's. Maybe we'll do a Prove Me Wrong about that.
Right.
I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, that might be the Prove Me Wrong for later.
Yeah. And I'm going to, just in terms of this podcast, and I know we're going to be doing a Megadeth one to compare their histories and development. I'm going to try to keep, at least for now, my deeper inclinations of who's the best. Because I know growing up, that was the big question. Are you a Metallica fan or a Megadeth fan? I mean, it was okay to be both, but there was always sort of, who's the winner? Who do you think's the best? Whose side are you on? And so I'm going to keep that secret.
All right. So Kill 'Em All comes out in 1983. I remember vividly purchasing this album at a store called Blue Meanie Records in El Cajon, California. It was an import record store, and I bought it because of the cover. It was a cool heavy metal cover. Had never heard a song from them. Purchased it, and my buddies and I, we just loved it. I mean, we consumed it. And there was I mean, I think it's their only true thrash album in many ways. And a year later, they were picked up by Elektra Records. So they had just the one album, Kill 'Em All, on Megaforce Records, and then they moved on to Elektra, a much bigger label, where they ended up recording their sophomore effort in 1984, Ride the Lightning, with producer Flemming Rasmussen in Copenhagen, Denmark. We'll talk in more detail about Ride the Lightning moving forward, but I want to move on to Master of Puppets, recorded in late 1985, again with Rasmussen in Copenhagen, Denmark. I do want to point out that there are 3 albums where Rasmussen and Metallica worked together in Copenhagen, Denmark, and they are their masterpieces. Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and And Justice for All. So that combination, there was just some magic to it, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Do you happen to know what he's doing now?
I haven't the slightest idea.
I'm gonna check it. I'm gonna check into
do a
that.
little research while I'm prattling on here. Master of Puppets, recorded in late 1985. The guys were busy. I mean, back to back records. So not only this relentless touring schedule, but finding time to both write and record these fantastic albums. Mixed in Los Angeles, Master of Puppets, and then released in March of 1986. They then toured with Ozzy Osbourne. That's the first time I saw Metallica was in 1986. Opening for Ozzy. It's the only time I got a chance to see Cliff Burton, and it was a fantastic show. Master of Puppets hit the top 30 in the album charts, and this is really the album where they broke and became sort of a household name, I suppose, and with zero coverage on MTV and minimal radio airplay. Tragically, Cliff Burton is killed in Sweden in September of 1986. This was heartbreaking. I remember this very well as a teenager, getting the news that Cliff Burton had passed in a tragic bus accident when the vehicle had slid on some ice and tipped onto its side. He was sleeping in one of the compartments and lost his life. And I also remember vividly that there was a lot of discussion about what direction they would go, whether they would remain as a band. They were so early in their career. Who would replace Cliff Burton?
Yeah, I mean, he was such a important part musically, which I know we'll talk about, but I mean, even the band recognized that, okay, this guy's leagues ahead of us in terms of just music theory and music understanding.
That is correct. They all spoke about how brilliant he was, his songwriting ability, his understanding of, as you say, music theory, and what an integral part of the band he had been in composing their songs. And of course, just a fantastic live performer. I remember very well his vocals on Creeping Death were just absolutely haunting when I saw him the one time. Did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I mean, we didn't get Metallica in Mississippi, but Cliff Burton was like a mythological figure. I mean, with the blue jean jacket and the long hair and the bass guitar. I mean, he was like, he's dead, and he was already mythical.
Yeah. So it's interesting how that happens with these bands when someone passes on early, how it can project them to an even greater height in terms of their popularity. We've seen that many times. After more than 40 editions, Jason Newsted signed with Metallica, leaving the band flotsam and jetsam. Just after joining Metallica, the newly revised quartet recorded a 5-song EP, which they called the 598 EP Garage Days Revisited.
Yes.
And this is really a bridge album, and we didn't have to wait long for it. It came out pretty quickly, and this was really our first introduction to Jason Newsted to the fans. Court, I remember very well how excited we were about this album, just to get something new from the band and just playing those 5 songs over and over and over. It's a cover album. It was very raw.
Again, mythological. And at least in Mississippi, it was just mythological because, well, I mean, California and the LA scene was mythological. And so you had this idea that they were passing around their Garage Days tape.
Right.
And so here they are giving us a taste of those. And I got something to say.
Yeah.
You know, I killed your baby today. And you're just like, whoa, these guys rule.
Well, they were stepping into punk, doing a little bit of punk. Of course, we know they're big fans of Budgie. And so that was really an exciting time for the band, and I think for the fans, because we got this bridge album. We got to hear a little bit of what they might sound like with Jason Newsted on bass. I loved it because it was $5.98. They were making a statement. They were saying to the record companies, "This is all we want to charge for this album. Don't rip off the fans." which I really enjoyed being a teenager without a lot of cash. And Justice for All was released in August of 1988, once again Fleming Rasmussen returning to produce. And in 1989, they co-headlined a tour with Queensryche, followed by the Monsters of Rock tour with Doc and Kingdom Come, Scorpions, and headliner Van Halen. And then on the heels of that tour, they embarked upon another 2 years of touring as a headliner. I saw the band 3 times during this era. I saw all 3 of those tours. And we can talk a little bit about what that was like to see them, because that obviously was, in terms of mythology, they were larger than life. They were something that people had never seen before. It was very exciting. And then lastly, in 1991, they released the Black Album, bringing in producer Bob Rock. By far and away, this is their most successful album and one of the most successful heavy metal albums in history. It is also a very controversial album, as it marked a clear shift in direction towards simpler song arrangements, sing-along choruses, and a greater emphasis on anthems. And we're going to cut it off, our survey of Metallica, with those albums.
Yeah, and I mean, just in terms of videos, right? They made one video, and that was for one. And then the Black Album comes out, and I want to say a majority of the songs wound up as a video in some way.
At least 4, maybe 5.
Yeah, and they were all big. It was amazing to see little kids asking their mother. There was a great album shop in Tupelo called Album Alley, and I remember a little kid asking his mother for the Black Album, and it's a very religious area, and so she's reading the back and the name titles, and she says, "Well, what's this?" It says, "The God That Failed." Well, God doesn't fail, and so she gave a little lecture to her son about that, and then bought him the album, and I'm like, gosh.
She actually bought it for him.
Yeah.
Wow.
My mom would have.
It's a pretty cool mom.
Would have probably slapped me for just even uttering the words, "Hey, buy this for me." So
yeah. Well, that's another discussion where we'll talk about your need for subterfuge in order to listen to rock and roll music whilst a teenager.
Yes.
That's an interesting story in and of itself.
Yeah, I'm emotionally scarred.
Court, why don't we talk just a little bit about the Metallica as a kind of revolutionary, transformative band in the 1980s?
Yeah.
I remember very well when Kill 'Em All came out. There were those who said, "Well, this is a punk album. I mean, it's so raw. The guitars are muddy. People really equated them to punk music. I always saw them as a speed metal band or a thrash band,
right? Particularly
with that album.
Yeah, and it, for most of my life, it has ranked as my favorite Metallica album.
Really?
Yeah. So, and I sometimes, there's another one I'll talk about later that fights for number one. But yeah, Kill 'Em All it's just raw power. Mm-hmm. And somehow it's organized and recorded well enough to come out as a cohesive whole. And it's really just amazing. It's amazing still to listen to. And it's so different from that to Ride the Lightning, where Ride the Lightning,
every other album they produced, yes,
is much more polished and focused on the sound that Metallica would become. But yeah, I love Kill 'Em All. I mean, I think the cover, the hand and the hammer and the blood, and right, it's just like, yeah, it's almost your brain's gonna get it bashed in, right? Right? That's what it's like listening to that album. So I think if one was going to rank Metallica albums, Kill 'Em All, even though it is different than the others, has to be in the discussion for the best.
I'd certainly put it in the top 5.
Yeah,
there's no question of that. I don't know that we'll rank these albums today, but.
Yeah.
I'm always cognizant of the subjectivity of ranking and saying best, worst.
Right.
Those are opinions.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's got great songs. The songs have meaning, and they really have a purpose. And it's a purpose of, if you just think, Hit the Lights. All of these are just action oriented. You've got Hit the Lights. You've got Four Horsemen, which brings in some nice religious imagery. I remember going to themes. Bible camp, and the guy was criticizing, like, "Oh, Metallica, they're devil worshippers, and they're talking about this," and I'm just like, "But that's in the Bible, right? If it's wrong for them to talk about it, then it should be wrong for us to talk about it in Sunday school." Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you've got that, and of course, I guess maybe the person did have an argument if they had talked about Jump in the Fire, which is, hey, let's go down to hell, right? Let's go jump in the fire, which again is great as a young person in a repressed society. And I mean, I grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi, where Reverend Wildman and his, the National American Family Radio, whatever, they were making national news, boycotting everything from The Simpsons to heavy metal music. I mean, I grew up in that community and it was in the 80s, where if you listen to music backwards, or if you listen to heavy metal music, there were backwards messages that would tell you to kill your parents, or if you played Dungeons and Dragons, you would kill your parents, and you had all these, again, myths. And, my mother bought them. She was scared to death. And to give her credit, right, she was raising 3 boys and had little to no help from anybody else, that she was worried we were going to become devil worshipers. Mm-hmm. And so that really just made me want to be really interested in
the occult,
in the occult and stuff.
I mean, I think that's part of being a teenager, is becoming curious about the occult and, exploring some darker themes. I was listening to a podcast the other day where they were talking about witch trials and witchcraft, and how often teenage girls think, well, maybe I could cast a spell. Maybe, right. Just a curiosity. And it's harmless, but at one point that wasn't seen as harmless.
Right. Yeah, and I think Metallica tapped into that, and I don't think they were sitting back, saying, hey, let's tap into this, and we'll be this bridge between the darker metal stuff, where you might look at Slayer or something, mm-hmm. which is not as accessible to the masses, versus what we see Metallica really become, where it is extremely accessible. But even in 1983, Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning, very accessible for kind of those people who are interested in Motley Crue's, mm-hmm. But they're not interested in the death metal stuff. And so here it touches on that angst of being a teenager, from Whiplash to Seek and Destroy to Metal Militia, right? These are, you mentioned Kiss earlier, right? These are anthems to get you fist pumping and mm-hmm. to say, yeah, you telling me to do this, well, in your face, right? I'm going to do whatever I want.
And that's always been a theme in hard rock and metal is resistance, kind of creating your own identity by kind of casting off the yoke of your parents and being who you want to be.
Right.
It's just part of, teen angst and rebellion, really.
Right.
And this is just a way of expressing it. And I think to perceive that it's going to lead to some more sinister behavior on the part of young people, well, it's not been borne out in the evidence. The vast majority of people that were fans of this music, hard rock, heavy metal, even the heavier stuff like Slayer, have become contributing members of society. They have children. They love their parents. It's just a form of entertainment and self-expression more than anything. Now, I do want to talk a little bit, since we're on Kill 'Em All, let's go ahead and run through some of the songs. We're not going to do a track-by-track listing, but I do want to talk a little bit about a song that you mentioned, Court, Jump in the Fire. This was by far and away my favorite song on the album, primarily because of the guitar riff. It was very different, very unique. It wasn't speed metal. There's a scale pattern that Kirk Hammett is employing there. But just really great lyrics and just a blistering solo from Kirk Hammett, which is really what I guess first drew me to Kirk Hammett as a guitar player, is the fact that he played so fast and there was just so many notes. And, today I don't know that he's seen as one of the great guitar virtuosos, but really a solid contributor to the band throughout his career, and some really interesting, really creative solos. He does melody very well, as well as employing speed in his solos.
Right. Yeah, what was it? And Justice for All. Right after that, he was ranked as, one of the top metal guitarists. And then there's that scene in the recording sessions of the Black Album where Bob Rock is, and I guess this is the job of a producer, to be a jerk, right? And he's sitting there, and Kirk Hammett does this really great guitar solo, and Bob Rock's like, that sucks, right? You're the number 1 ranked guitarist in the world, right? Do something better. And so he sits there and he does it again. And it was just a neat example of what a producer can do, and also what Hammett can do. And so he, in the And Justice for All of the Black Album, was recognized, but he has kind of just kind of going into obscurity, except for the fans, right? People who keep up
Sure.
with Metallica.
Oh yeah, I mean he's got a huge fan base on his own. People who
Yeah.
really enjoy his guitar playing. You've mentioned a lot of the tracks on that album, "Seek and Destroy," the Four Horsemen. I mean, these are all songs that have Mustaine written all over them. He was one of the primary writers of these songs, and you can really see his influence in the early work of Metallica.
Yeah, Four Horsemen, Jump in the Fire, Phantom Lord.
Phantom Lord.
Yeah,
I think
those
No
are.
Remorse might have been something that he worked on at one point. I can't
Yeah, I'm
recall.
not sure he gets a writing credit on it.
No,
but,
I don't believe he
yeah.
does. But I mean, his stamp is on it as well as some of the stuff on Ride the Lightning.
And I think, if you listen to, Megadeth's first album, Killing Is My Business, and Business is Good, it has that punk sort of sound that
Very
you
much.
hear on
Very
Kill 'Em
much.
All.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, you can say what you want to about Dave Mustaine. That first Metallica album is, he's there, even though
Sure.
he's not physically
Sure.
there. Right?
Well, I
His
remember when,
presence.
not to get too much into Megadeth, but I remember listening to that first album and hearing Mechanics, which is
Right.
the Four Horsemen, as I recall. It's the same music with different lyrics, and just
Yeah.
being blown away, that this is the same song. He's just changed the lyrics. And, it wasn't until much later, I think, that I realized that that was really his song, that
Right.
Metallica, altered and changed, and they, because they had worked on it as well, they got co-writing credits on it. But
Yeah. Yeah,
I,
we couldn't get that album in Tupelo, so it was much later when I learned how to special order stuff. And
So the record stores wouldn't carry certain albums?
well, it was, oh yeah, right. Well, if you went to something like Walmart, they
Of course.
actively censored and banned albums. But and of course Tupelo, well, Album Alley was a really small place, and especially we're dealing with albums and cassette tapes and I guess some 8 tracks. But when we got the mall and its bigger name kind of record stores, they didn't. The metal section was tiny, and they didn't stock
And this is
old.
when hard rock and metal was massive as a
Well, yeah. Well, it was growing
consumer
in the
demand was
late '80s.
big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't in Tupelo, so
I see. It's interesting.
it was mostly country music there.
Is there anything else you want to say about Kill 'Em All before we move forward?
I will say, I don't know, Matt, if you've ever watched the movies The River's Edge. It's
No.
got Keanu Reeves and Crispin Glover, and came out in the late '80s. Coming of age story, really centered around a bunch of kids who listen to heavy metal, and somebody winds up dead, and
I remember this movie. I've not seen it, but I remember it.
It's a dark coming of age story. Really great. Check it out.
I will.
But yeah, if you want to get a sense of kind of, I don't know, when I like to watch it because it reminds me of the '80s. It's a nice snapshot of the '80s and listening to heavy metal, riding around with your friends, getting in trouble, and so that's what I think of. You're going out and you throw in Kill 'Em All, and it's amazing. And I will say this in terms of overall stuff, what sets Kill 'Em All apart from other heavy metal groups at the time is that this sounds like a band, right? This is even though Hammond has just come in as the guitarist, they're tight. And the songs are well crafted, and so they sound like a band that has purpose. And then you throw in some really good production.
Yeah.
And
And they'd been touring. They'd been performing a lot of gigs in the Bay Area and L.A., so they'd been working on that material and performing that material for well over a year.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that, and we see that so often with the debut effort from bands. They've been touring for 3 or 4 years. They've been playing the songs, and so that often that first album is, it's going to be so far above anything else they're going to produce once they become famous, and there's pressure for them to write and produce and get new material out.
I guess that's where it gets weird, and I know we'll discuss this later in another podcast, but Megadeth's first effort, it doesn't have that, right?
It's incredibly raw.
Yeah,
It's incredibly
yeah.
raw. And I'll be honest with you, I like the album and I've listened to it, but it's not something I'm going to keep putting in and listening to over and over as
Right.
I did with Kill 'Em All. Kill 'Em All, I mean, that was just on a loop
Yeah.
for the first year and a half that I discovered Metallica.
I still go to it. I mean, that's the one. I guess Injustice for All usually requires kind of a commitment because the songs are so long and complex.
Yes.
Kill 'Em All is just
Yeah.
raw. Just let's get the house clean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Start showing how old we are. Let's get this house clean, or let me go mow the yard, or let me go for a nice jog. And
Man. In your view, in your opinion, what is the best song on Kill 'Em All?
well, yeah,
What's your favorite?
it's hard to say. I mean, I love Hit the Lights. I mean, there's just, I mean, I want to break stuff, right? Hit the lights. And I can remember being in church choir, and there was some song we sang. It was some hymn, but we would sit back in the back. It was something about the light, and so we'd be like, hit the lights, hit the lights. And we couldn't belt it out because the music minister
Of course.
would have kicked us
There would
out.
have been an exorcism.
I will say it's hard to say my favorite, but I will say the most kind of shocking, earth redefining song is the whole Anesthesia Pulling Teeth with.
So different.
You can do that with the bass guitar, and I would eventually become a bassist primarily, and that was one of the reasons because I was like, wow, that's amazing. You can make those sounds with the bass guitar.
You can do a solo on a bass guitar.
Right, and and
there weren't many performers at that time doing it.
Yeah, so that we were just my group of friends were just like that, and that ties again into Cliff's mythology of he's from another planet, right? I imagine if you get on social media, you see that bass player from. I forget where he is. He's a jazz bass player, Jaco.
Pistorius.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I imagine Cliff Burton would be sort of that way, where not necessarily doing jazz stuff, but he would be doing just. I imagine he would have left Metallica behind at some point. And
certainly done some solo work.
Yeah,
broke off on his own.
It would have been amazing to see what he did.
Yeah. Kill 'Em All for me, there were the songs that I liked immediately, Seek and Destroy, that sort of thing. Jump in the Fire was always a standout.
Yeah.
But over time, I really started to like Motor Breath.
Yeah.
Because it was so fast. It's just the picking is so fast. And it is, as you say, it's just this raw expression of energy. Really enjoyed that song.
Yeah, another, to me, kind of Judas Priest channeled. We're going fast. We've got leather. We've got fire. We've got whiskey. It's just.
When I first heard it, I immediately thought of Motorhead, who was popular at the time.
Motorhead, yeah.
But over time, I realized that although there's some influence, I think Metallica really went to another level.
Right.
Whereas Motorhead pretty much played the same style of music throughout their career, their tenure.
Good old Lemmy.
Yes, God rest his soul.
Wait a second. Lemmy is God.
Okay.
Right? Right? That's who would win in a guitar duel? God or Lemmy? It's a trick.
A bass guitar duel.
Yeah. It's a trick question.
Yeah.
Lemmy is God.
Ride the Lightning, Court.
Yes.
Ride the Lightning. This is personally my favorite Metallica album.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this album. I've listened to this album probably more than any other. And just such a progression in terms of production and musical ability, songwriting. I mean, they took it to another level. And, from a historian's perspective, I really enjoyed this album because they're tackling some topics that they've not looked at before. They're becoming more complex in their arrangements. They're starting to draw on other areas. As you said, the first album was really just about energy and touring and life on the road, that sort of thing. Well, they move forward. And there's one song in particular that really stood out to me, and it is The Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
I always thought it was The Call of Cthulhu. I learned much later it's The Call of Cthulhu.
Cthulhu.
Yeah. By H.P. Lovecraft.
The big squid.
Yeah, so I want to give I did a little research on H.P. Lovecraft because, quite frankly, I didn't know a lot about the man. And I found out that Howard Phillips Lovecraft, or H.P. Lovecraft, lived from 1890 to 1937. He died relatively young. He passed away of cancer as a relatively young man. He was a horror fiction writer from Providence, Rhode Island. He struggled in obscurity and barely survived. So, like so many of
Right.
these people that we know and love, during his lifetime, he really did not prosper. He struggled terribly. And then
Oh, if he
the
were
tragic
alive
irony
today.
of it all is that he passes away, and suddenly people want to read his work. I don't know what it is about the human condition that we never recognize brilliance, or we sometimes don't recognize brilliance until after that individual has gone, and then we think, wow, this is really good.
Yeah, we missed out on something special
Yeah.
there.
Well, and think of what he could have done had he, been more prosperous and able to, really finance and been more comfortable. Obviously, and when someone struggles in obscurity, they've got to make ends meet, and so they're probably doing other things that pull them away from the thing that they love, writing in this case.
Right.
He passed away at 46 years old. It was not, as I said, until after his death that a market developed for his material. He did find limited demand for his work in periodicals like Weird Tales and Pulp Fiction magazines, but this was not enough to sustain him, and after his death, there became this macabre fascination with his work. His work includes The Call of Cthulhu, At the Mountains of Madness, and The Shadows over Innsmouth. A lot of his work is set in Rhode Island and New England area, and that, I think, gives it a kind of an interesting dark feel.
Yeah, kind of an
Salem,
Edgar Allan Poe. Same
absolutely.
thing.
Salem witch trials, House of Seven Gables, all of that.
Rogues Island, right?
Precisely. The song that I really focused on as a historian for this particular album is "Creeping Death," the story of the biblical Exodus. For those of you that are not aware of the biblical Exodus, we don't know exactly when that happened. We're fairly certain it was the 1200s BC. 1200s BC. And one thing I always point out to my students about the Israelites and their captivity in Egypt, which lasted about 400 years, is contrary to popular belief, there is no evidence that Israelites built pyramids. Were you aware of that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Why do you think we so often focus on, well, they enslaved the Israelites and they forced them to build all these pyramids? The timeline does not line up. We know that. But why do you think there continues to be this connection between Israelites and pyramid building?
I don't know, right? Is that something you've encountered in Kentucky or
No.
no?
In the classroom, without
No.
fail, in classrooms, again and
Okay.
again.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just never talked about growing up. I mean, they were enslaved, and I mean, they came there willingly, according to the account in the Tanakh or the Hebrew Bible. They came in there with Joseph and Jacob, and so
Correct.
yeah, there was never even a thought really in terms of them. But I have heard a few people. I didn't know it was as prevalent as you're suggesting.
That has been my experience teaching both in California as well as here in
Yeah.
Kentucky, is that students just presume that they were built by the Israelites. The timeline doesn't not match up. Those pyramids had been standing for 1,000 years by the time the Israelites were enslaved
Right?
in Egypt.
Yeah.
So the timeline does not match up. But I think the reason why there is this, continues to be this prevailing idea that Israelites built pyramids is due to Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, just the notion of slavery, right? It's a different type of slavery than what we think of in terms of American slavery.
yes.
I mean, basically everyone was a slave to the Pharaoh. I mean, unless you had some sort of special status family wise or whatnot. I mean, the Pharaoh was, he was God.
Yes, we know that, right? The way they built those pyramids, right? You got to have a
Right.
house for them in the next life, yeah. But, if you've ever watched the Ten Commandments, if you remember the cartoon The Prince of Egypt I think it was the late 1990s, again and
yeah.
again, they talk about the Pharaoh Ramses, or Ramses the Great, and how, he was forcing the Israelites to build these pyramids. That is not historically accurate, nor is this idea that Ramses II was the Pharaoh of the biblical
Right.
Exodus. There is no evidence for that.
Yeah.
None. Particularly in the Bible, there is none. So it's interesting how these things get distorted over time. And to Metallica's credit, when they sing about Creeping Death, where they tackle this theme of the biblical Exodus, they do not mention pyramids or Ramses II.
Right. I mean, the creeping death, right, is one of the plagues, isn't it? Where they
Yes.
come around and they kill the firstborn son unless you've got the special mark on the door. And I mean, that's creepy enough if you read that in the Hebrew text. Um, but yeah, to write a song about it, you're just like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
creeping death.
Well, what was so cool about it, I think, I mean, I went to church too as a young person, and then to hear about it in this context as a teenager, you're revisiting the Bible and the biblical story. So I think one of the things that is often overlooked and was certainly overlooked by adults and parents at the time was, when we listen to songs about, creeping death, the rhyme of the ancient mariner, a lot of times it provoked young people to go out and do a little research and to learn a little bit more about these topics. We
Right.
were learning about history.
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's, that's one of the weird ironies is that you had all these churches that were anti heavy metal, and then you listen to heavy metal like Metallica, and you're like, oh, well, it's actually telling you the story of the Bible, and
Yeah.
so you're like, hey, I'm learning about the four horsemen, or I'm learning about the Exodus, and so right, these should be praise songs if you think about it. This is
Yes.
these are the,
Creeping Death's a praise
these
song,
are
right?
early praise songs, right? You stick your hands up in the air and you say, "I'm creeping death."
Well, I do remember a almost cult-like devotion in shouting "Die" as they talked about "Die by my hand." He creeps across the
That's
land, killing
right.
firstborn man. That was pretty powerful stuff. And the backup vocal on that was just so powerful.
Well,
Um,
Stephen King. You mentioned H.P. Lovecraft. It's amazing how influential Stephen King was with metal at this
oh
time. So
yes,
I believe "Ride the Lightning" came from some passage in The Stand. Of course, Anthrax they loved
of course.
Stephen King,
They were all
and
over
so
that.
I'm the walking dude, and
Among the living, sure, yeah.
so yeah, that was one of the as a heavy metal fan in Tupelo, Mississippi. Everyone thought you were, Satan worshiper, and you were going to kill them while they're sleeping, and so they would criticize you or evangelize you, and so you had these retorts, and this was often it of like, no, right, this is teaching me about literature and the Bible, and it's like, okay, it became one of those things where it's like, I know the Bible better than you do because I listened to this song and then I went back and read it.
Yeah, right.
And now I've read it and I can, and so, yeah, I know it and understand it better than you do. And so I encounter that in the classroom to this day and out and about because as a philosopher and, um, I mean, theologian's too strong, but I spend a lot of time reading the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, or the Christian Bible, all sorts of religious texts from different things because they have deep, meaningful stuff. It's not just to evangelize you, and that's where growing up where I did, everything was. It's really a consumerist understanding that everything's trying to evangelize you. And it's just like, just because I'm listening to Metallica and it's talking about these creepy themes, they're not trying to get me to buy in to be a devil worshiper. Just because I read the Bible doesn't make me, it's not like it's, you've got to send your money in today, right? You can just do things and enjoy it, right? That's a weird kind of consumerist historical thing that we've seen where nowadays everything is trying to get you to is at least discussed in those terms that if you do this right, you're feeding the system or they're trying to convert you in
Yeah.
some way.
It's you point out how often we would try to make this argument in defense of hard rock and heavy metal that, we're learning, this is educational, it's enrichment.
They're talented
Yeah,
musicians.
but the thing that always stood out to me is how dismissive people were of that notion,
Right.
particularly parents, adults, teachers, how they would just think it was absurd, this idea that you could learn from this music or that it could be in some way beneficial or enriching to you as a person, that it could, improve your identity. I always thought that was really interesting because I have found the experience of listening to this music fulfilling over
Yeah.
the course of my
Yeah.
lifetime. It's been, it's more than just entertainment. There's certainly
Yeah.
more to it.
Yeah, my mother found my brother's copy of the sheet music for "And Justice for All," and this is a long story, but I'm going to keep it short. So she found this as she was looking for other things, and so she found this music book, and she went through and read every lyric and came up with reasons why it was satanic in some way, and it was really a lesson in some really funny reasoning, where she would read something like Blackened, which is about the environment.
Yes.
Blackened in the air, winter ripple sand, throwing on the sea, into obscurity. Death of Mother Earth, never a rebirth. Evolution's in, never will a man, never.
And so she would be like, well, yeah, we should take care of the earth, but this is satanic. And then, so she would go through, and every page she would rip out and tear up and read the lyrics, rip out and tear up.
Wow.
And I was smart enough as the youngest one to just sit there and, sing the songs in my head like, yeah, blackened is the end, winter it will send.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I'm glad that you mentioned Black, and that's where we're going here in a little while. But yes, they had songs about climate change and environment and
Nuclear
preserving the
waste,
earth.
yeah.
I mean, they had some really important themes that they tackled. They were not just a rock band, not just a heavy metal band singing about partying and chicks and the devil.
Motley Crue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There was certainly more to them.
Before we move to Master, let me just say that the neat thing about Ride the Lightning, I did not like this album when I was younger. Because it lacked that rawness. It was such a sort of different from
Yes.
Kill 'Em All. But it's the one that has grown on me the most. And I actually listen to Ride the Lightning more than any of the other albums. Because it's well produced, it's well written, it's gotten creepier, right? The song "Trapped Under Ice," that's
yeah.
one of my favorite
So
songs.
good.
I would love
So
for the Jesters to do that. Yeah, just the idea of, that's some creepy stuff.
For those of you that are not aware, he just referenced our band. Dr. Lewis and I are in a band called Court, and the Jesters, a play on his first name. And
I did not come up with the name, but I
That is
accept it
true.
fully.
Yeah, that's correct. But yes, we are both musicians, full disclosure. Now, before we move on to Master of Puppets, I just want to talk very briefly about some of the track listings. Obviously, Fade
yeah.
to Black. I mean, Fade to Black was just such a powerful song. I remember that was the first true standout. And there were people that were like, oh my gosh, they're doing a ballad.
Right.
How could Metallica do a ballad? That is not a ballad.
Right.
I mean, there's a nice acoustic opening. It's beautiful. I
Right.
mean, it's
And that's that
haunting.
Cliff Burton
Oh,
influence
yeah.
right there.
Yeah, really powerful stuff. I do want to mention that the Call of Cthulhu, Mustaine gets a writing credit on that. So 2 albums in, they're still drawing on his body of material in order to write and produce. So
As
really,
I say, I think he has another one too.
I believe that he does.
Ride the Lightning.
Yes,
or
I think it's Ride the Lightning is the other writing credit that he has. Escape is a song that I've always enjoyed, but I have heard that was a song they were forced to do by the record company.
Really?
That they wanted a hit. They wanted a radio-friendly hit. And so, begrudgingly, they produced this song. And it's interesting because I really like the song. I think it's a great song. It is perhaps a bit more accessible or listenable, if that's a word, but I don't see any reason not to like that song. But apparently the band was not thrilled with the requirement to include it on the album.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's several. For Whom the Bell Tolls. Again, nice religious imagery there. In terms of philosophy, often, you look at something like Kill 'Em All, and it references some meaningful stuff, but I mean, it's just heavy metal, bang your head,
Yeah.
thrash. But when you get to Ride the Lightning, you get these really deep, thoughtful songs to where you listen to something like For Whom the Bell Tolls, and it's dark and foreboding. You listen to something like Trapped Under Ice, and you get this real sense of fear and struggle that comes with with that fade to black, creeping death. They've gotten better in terms of really
light years.
writing songs that elicit emotions, right? In terms of aesthetics, which is the study of beauty, one of the more famous arguments is that it's something that produces good, but it doesn't produce action like ethics would, right? Ethics tells us to do things. But that's one of the neat things about metal music, and especially we start seeing it in terms of Metallica here, that it's not just banging your head now. It's eliciting, it's getting these emotions out, which is really neat.
Yeah. You mentioned For Whom the Bell Tolls. That is actually based off of a book by Hemingway. So Ernest Hemingway,
right.
I mean, it's his bestseller. I mean, in some ways, it was a global bestseller because it was predicated upon his time serving as a war correspondent during the Spanish Civil War. He was sent to Spain as a journalist to document the war between the legitimate Republican government of Spain, which was under duress, and Francisco Franco's guerrilla forces. Francisco Franco, as you're probably aware, was a fascist. He ended up winning and taking power in Spain, and he ruled Spain for decades as a fascist dictator. But there was a lot of upheaval in Spain in the 1930s. The Spanish Civil War ground on for about 3 years, and Hemingway's dispatches on the war really made it clear that he was pro-Republican. He was in favor of the legitimate government of Spain and very critical of fascist designs.
I was going to say not the political party, the Republicans.
Yes, that is very important. So in this case, we're talking about the government that favored a representative form of government or Republican form of government. Yes, that is important to make that clear. And his experiences provide the material For Whom the Bell Tolls. Hemingway, it's certainly his most heralded novel. Really powerful stuff.
Have you read Hemingway?
I have read some Hemingway. Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
The Nick Adams stories was a really good one for me.
Really? Yeah, I've struggled with Hemingway. It just, I don't get it. So, and I've talked to a fellow professor here, Carl Runyon, who doesn't get it either. I explained, and I'm drawing a blank about the name of the one I recently read, and I was just like, yeah, that's him drinking absinthe a lot and getting married. Anyway, so I was like, there wasn't much to it, and Carl said that's typical of Hemingway. But
isn't it
I don't
cool?
know, right? Maybe prove me wrong. Hemingway's the best.
Well, I just think it's really cool. You've got this speed metal band, and suddenly they're drawing on For Whom the Bell Tolls by Hemingway, and they write this incredibly powerful song. And I do want to mention, really important about this before we move on to Master of Puppets, when I heard For Whom the Bell Tolls the first time, and in particular that opening, that muted chug, that was not like anything I had ever heard in music. I mean, that was so transformative to music. The way that they produced, they were taking hard rock or heavy metal into a completely new direction. I don't think people today realize how revolutionary Metallica was to music because of the way they played their guitars, because of the sound they got out of their guitars.
Right.
I mean, that opening, that chug when they're doing that walk down, that is like nothing I had ever heard. I just remember playing it again and again and just thinking, how did they get that sound out of their guitars?
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Rasmussen earlier. I mean, this is where he plays an important role helping create that sound as a producer does. And I did look up. He produced one of Rainbow's albums in I think '81, "Difficult to Cure," and then he produced Blind Guardian, which is a group we might talk about eventually.
Yeah.
So like the Nightfall of Middle Earth and those sorts of really great albums about Tolkien, right?
That's right.
Blind Guardian, if you've not listened to them.
Great metal band, like power metal.
Yeah. And they have several albums where they're just they're talking about Tolkien's universe, the Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion, and so.
All right, Dr. Lewis, let's go ahead and move on to Master of Puppets with the time that we have remaining.
Yeah.
The song that I really wanted to focus on here, and I'm only going to do one for Master of Puppets, is Disposable Heroes. Now, Disposable Heroes, again, speaking about that kind of revolutionary new sound, that quick opening chug that they have on the E string. I mean, that was just so powerful to hear that. But Disposable Heroes is not one of the big hits on that album,
I'm
but
surprised you brought it
I
up.
love it. Well, so as a historian, the reason I value it is because they are tackling the the subject of war, but in a very interesting way. They are basically talking about the soldier, the young man, and how his life will be irrevocably changed, altered, and in some way damaged as a result of their participation, that person's participation in warfare.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've had many bands in the 60s and 70s that were critical of American participation in war. But to talk so in such stark terms about how it affects the psyche, I mean, they reference PTSD. They don't mention PTSD specifically, but they talk about how it is damaging, how it is harming the individual, and you know, for a cause that they don't even fully understand because they are so young. And we see this with every war. There's the old adage that you know, old men start wars and young men die in them. That is absolutely true.
Right.
You
Right.
know, it's typically old white men who are responsible for the decisions of going to war and making war on other nations. And then we draft or we compel people to go to war that, you know, that they've not fully developed. I mean, they're 18, 19, 20. As we know, being slightly older, you know, there's an awful lot of development and growing up to do in your 20s. And, you know, tragically, these young people are being sent into conflicts. They don't even understand the politics behind
Right.
it. They don't understand the geopolitical, the socioeconomic reasons why we're really involved in those
Yeah.
conflicts.
To cite Black Sabbath, they're used like pawns in chess.
Yeah,
Right.
good. Yeah, Ozzy
They're
was quite good at
disposable,
that.
right?
Yeah,
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 they're
that's true.
disposable.
That's true. You know, I'm just going to give you a few lyrics here that kind of play into what I'm talking about here.
That's all right.
Bred to kill them all, victim of what said should be a servant till I fall. Soldier boy, made of clay, now an empty shell. 21, only son, but he will serve us well. Bred to kill, not to care, do just as we say. Finished here, greetings, death, he's yours to take away. Back to the front, you will do what I say when I say. Back to the front, you will die when I say you must die.
And that's, I mean, great lyrics, meaningful, and then it's really catchy too. Back to the front. Dun, dun, dun,
Oh,
dun,
yeah.
dun, dun. So,
It's, I mean, the attack of that song is vicious. I mean, it's just that it starts out fast with that kind of that rhythmic chug, and then it just gets faster. It progresses on almost like machine gun fire.
right.
Yeah, they really did an outstanding job with that song.
Yeah.
Now, I worked on Camp Pendleton in San Diego for 3 years, and I had a chance to talk to a lot of combat veterans that had served in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I talked to them a lot about the kind of music that they enjoyed when they were deployed and in battle situations. And it was incredible how many of them listened to metal and hard rock when they were in their tank, when they were in their foxhole. This gave them comfort, it gave them purpose, it gave them strength, it pumped them up to do this job. And I've often thought about, you know, trying to gather the accounts, the testimonies of those soldiers, and to get some sense of,
Right.
you know, what role music and hard rock and heavy metal music played in their survival, you know, and trying to make sense of these conflicts that they're participating in.
Well, I'm currently editing a couple books on the philosophy of anger, and one of the essays I'm working on deals with anger and how it relates to music, and specifically heavy metal, because a lot of times metal is laughed at or put down because they're just angry and they're screaming and you know they can't play, and so or it's evil. You're gonna become a devil worshiper or kill somebody, and so you find out that that's not really true. It's therapeutic in a way. It gives
Yes.
you focus. It gives you inspiration, and so there's. You know, we often in our society say, "Oh, you shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't be angry." But anger plays a key role in us as moral beings, right? If somebody wrongs us, it's arguably the appropriate moral response is to resent, to be angry, to have this sort of rational anger, and so that's where heavy metal music, like we see Metallica, and especially what they do on Master of Puppets and Justice for All, there is this focused anger. We see that they're taking on social causes now, and that I know they say they get tired of that by the Black Album, but and so right when you listen to this and Justice for All, there is a broader social kind of, right, things are broken, and right, let's let's take a hammer to them in some cases.
I've always thought that hard rock and heavy metal music was very socially conscious,
Yeah.
and addressing some of the more egregious problems in society, and trying even to come up with solutions about how we might do things better.
Yeah.
It's mostly critique, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
It's typically
yeah.
critique, but the fact that they're tackling these important social issues was important to me as a young person. It was part of my development and learning that these are important causes.
Yeah, it's kind of our folk singers of the
Yeah,
of our
absolutely.
generation.
Oh yeah,
right?
it was not that different.
Yeah.
It was not that different.
Yeah, and I think that's why hair metal died out fairly quickly. Well, I mean, when it happened really quickly. But right, they weren't singing about meaningful stuff. As I shared with you, I've just recently written a chapter in Kiss and Philosophy about looking at the different types of Kiss songs. And what's interesting, even though most of their songs are about love, what seems to be their biggest hits are the ones that are about life and living life a certain way.
I see.
Those
Sure.
seem to be the biggest hits. And so I think when we listen to music, yeah, there's a time to, to listen to the songs that are just about partying
Sure.
and,
Sure.
those sorts of
Fun,
things. Yeah.
light.
Right. But then what's really meaningful and what we go back to are those songs that are right about something.
Particularly if you connect with them during maybe a dark time in your life, and it provides inspiration and meaning to you. I know anytime you listen to artists, if they're being interviewed about their work, they'll say the thing that was most gratifying is that someone came up to them and said, this meant so much to me during a trial or tribulation in life.
That's what I think of with Welcome Home Sanitarium, is that there was a real sense of growing up, no matter how tough I was growing up, I felt like an outsider, and I felt like people were against me because of my enjoyment of metal and other things. And so you could listen to something like Sanitarium and say, oh yeah, maybe I am crazy, but maybe that's where I belong, right? In a
sure.
home of the crazies.
Sure.
And so that's where, yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to And Justice for All, if that's
right.
okay with you.
Yeah. Gosh.
Why don't you go ahead and start with this
What
one?
a fabulous album.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even just in terms of the recording, and I know they've just recently re-released it with bass or whatever, but one of the things
Re-release now with bass.
yeah, right. There was some problems with the recording, and
Were they problems, technical issues,
I don't-
or were they turning down Jason Newsted's amplifier?
right, yeah, I don't know. I loved the album regardless. What I really loved was that I had the cassette tape. You could put it in your cassette tape player, and this is like a whole old school. We had a jam box. It was big in the 80s. You'd put your tape in, and then my brother and I, he had a Mustang. We somehow wired this jam box into the speakers of his Mustang, and I mean, create some really great sound. But if you turn up And Justice for All, you get that weird sort of
Yes. Yes.
I loved that. I mean, even though I think some people are like, well, that's a mistake, right? That needs to be gotten rid of. I'm like,
Distortion.
yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's like the freaking aliens communicating to me, right? Yeah. So, I mean, the album is just nonstop, as close to perfection, I will argue, in terms of Metallica, from lyrics to musicianship.
Even though there's no bass in it?
It's still,
I mean, how good would it have been if they'd put some bass in it?
well, I mean, you can go check out the newer version.
Have you heard it?
I've not.
It's not that much different from the original.
That's what I figured. I mean, most people don't listen for bass anyway. It's something you feel.
Sure.
And so,
And I'm not being critical of the album. I really love the album. It's
Yeah.
great. I love the songs. I like that they're longer. I like that there are multiple rhythm changes.
yeah. I mean, it's almost like epic Iron Maiden stuff, except instead of getting the little gallop, it's just back into the end. Winter will sin.
It's definitely a dark album.
To obscurity, death of Mother Earth, never. I mean, right? Just. I mean, and I know they released one, and that was big. But gosh, the whole album just has so much, and you get the nice little poetry from Cliff Burton, the long extended instrumental where you have the last
To Live Is to Die,
writing contribution from Cliff.
which is a beautiful song. It's got some really beautiful
Right.
acoustic intros and
Yeah.
really a great song.
Yeah. But no, it's a gorgeous album with some incredibly deep lyrics that touch on a lot of those social issues, and that's why I couldn't believe that my mother was going through ripping out pages, because I'm like, this is the most non-satanic,
Right.
right? If it were Kill 'Em All, yeah, you can make some cases for, right? Okay, well that's satanic. And I'm just like, and it's not Slayer, right?
It could be worse. Could be listening to Venom.
Right? Or Wasp, or King. I always
King
get
Diamond.
him. Yeah, I always want to say King Crimson, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's different.
King Diamond. Yeah. But yeah, so in terms of meaning and sort of philosophical impact, that's where "And Justice for All." I mean, just the cover, the notion of justice as being blind, and it's broken, right? You see the cover, it's crumbling.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is full on. They are
There's major
tearing
social critique,
down the
yes.
system at this point, which I love that. I love protest songs. I wish they had continued in that direction, but they didn't.
Yeah, for me, from a songwriting ability, this is the album that really stands out. Frayed Ends of Sanity, Harvester of Sorrow. They're dealing with some kind of interesting. They're dark themes. They don't necessarily make sense, but the songs are well written. Multiple, as I said, multiple rhythm changes. Even the lyrics change. The choruses change. What they're talking about from verse to verse changes, and I really enjoy that about this album. I think this is James Hetfield at his very best in terms of his vocal abilities. They toured for nearly 3 years after producing this album. I got a chance to, as I said, I saw them 3 times during this period. And I think this is where we start to see some fracture in the band. I know that they were consuming a lot of alcohol, that James Hetfield was dealing with some substance abuse issues. And I remember very well around this time there was a magazine called Hit Parader, and
Yeah.
there was a poster of them all holding up like bottles of Jack Daniels and beers, and the logo behind them said Alcoholica in the Metallica font.
Right.
So they were taking a lot of pride in the fact they were this hard partying band, and it obviously took its toll.
Yeah, and I mean, it was the late 80s,
Right.
88. I mean, this was the heyday of rock and metal music, where bands like Metallica could make an impact in the mainstream, and they did. I mean, you had Headbangers Ball going on in terms of MTV, which was a national, television show that you could watch at late at night. Yeah, I mean, this was the heyday. I'm glad I lived through this, right?
Yeah.
Even though it was in
yeah.
Tupelo, Mississippi, it was the time to be alive, to listen to music. And music was changing because the 80s was all synth pop. It had that new wave
Yes.
sound. This was the beginning of us coming out of that. Now, Metallica never had synth pop songs, but you look at somebody, I mean, Kiss, right? Even they've now transitioned from Crazy Nights, which is just pop rock.
Feel good.
Yeah,
Pop rock. Yeah, sure.
which is my son's favorite song now, Crazy Crazy Nights. Into, for better or worse, the Hot in the Shade, which, keyboards are now way down, and they're back to rock. So things are looking hopeful in terms of heavy metal, and they will be for several years until, 93 or so.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
so.
Well, you can make an argument that after 1990, that tastes are changing. Grunge is beginning to get a following, which I've always seen grunge as just kind of the logical outgrowth of hard rock, heavy metal, hair rock, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it seems it's that stripped down to noise and noise in a good way. I'm not criticizing it, but yeah, yeah.
But what's interesting is, they come out with the Black Album in 1991, And, we're seeing a major shift in music tastes and what the record companies want to push, what they want to sell and make money on. And yet the Black Album is this historical anomaly. It is just massive. It is
Right.
massive.
Yeah, and it's really the record industry that killed off
Hmm.
metal.
Oh,
I
no
mean,
doubt.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't. And I think you talk about this in your chapter in Kiss and Philosophy, right? It wasn't, a bunch of people saying, "Hey, let's just switch our musical taste and we'll buy up Nirvana and whatever Seattle band comes out or Chicago if you look at Smashing Pumpkins." But now it's record companies that say,
Yeah.
right, we need to find new cities. It's back to that consumerism, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always got to have something fresh and, safe. There's a nice interview with Frank Zappa where he talks about the young music execs aren't willing to experiment. They want to make sure that they're selling nice packaged stuff. And grunge was kind of on the fray. It
Mm-hmm.
was part of that
Oh, without a
alternative.
doubt.
But then all of a sudden, I mean, it just,
It's the mainstream.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because, Nirvana, Soundgarden,
Pearl Jam.
Pearl Jam, right? They were all considered heavy metal, right? They were on Headbangers Ball.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were
Alice in
just,
Chains.
yeah.
Mother Love Bone. I mean, Mother Love Bone was like a hair rock band, and yet they kind of birthed the grunge movement in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and so that was as really neat. I'm sure they have those videos somewhere to see how the metal scene, the hard rock heavy metal scene, embraced grunge.
Yes.
I mean, Smashing Pumpkins were, kind of stoner metal.
Mm-hmm.
The Melvins, right? And so you have all these groups, and then, all of a sudden, they just become their own, right? It's and a lot of that was hair metals. If you look at hair metal at the time, it really became laughable to where you have the damn Yankees, right? The super group of
Mm-hmm.
all these.
Became a parody of itself,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
so you had to get your hair taller, and you had to get the right sort of scream, and you had to write songs about underage girls and drugs, and
Well,
yeah,
even when you watch The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2,
Yeah.
which is a great film, if you've not seen it,
Yeah.
run out and get it. It
Yeah.
is such a time capsule of the absurdity and excess of hard rock and heavy metal, and in particular hair
yeah,
rock.
and the recent Motley Crue
The Dirt.
documentary,
Oh,
yeah.
yes, absolutely.
So you realize that most of that was just surface, right? Musically, in terms of meaning, it was just kind of surface. It was the pop music of its time.
That is correct.
And yeah, just as we don't sit around listening to pop hits. They come and go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that it went away
Yeah.
really, really quickly. And I don't think a lot of it's not a bad thing, right? Think about Nelson, right? They played in Kentucky
Just a couple months ago.
really talented musicians, singers. But then they're considered heavy metal, and they're like, "Here she comes, just a
Yeah,
walking."
I don't know that I ever considered them heavy metal.
Yeah,
were
but they
part of
got
the-
lumped in it.
They were
right?
part of the pop metal.
Yeah,
that's true.
But that's where you have that sort of stuff, and people are usually smarter and more intuitive than corporations give them credit, and so they see that, and they can see that they're being peddled something to. Because back then you bought singles, right? They had those little cassette singles that you could buy. And you're just like, you're going to spend $4 on that. Well, why don't you just buy the album, right?
Right. Now, with the Black Album, there's a couple things that really stand out to me about that. I remember we felt like we waited a long time for that album.
Yeah.
Almost 4 years between albums. And I remember a lot of Metallica fans were angry we had to wait so long for an album. And of course, now in 2019, I mean, it's standard for you to wait 5 or 6 years for an album to produce, for a band to produce a new album. I mean,
Right.
that's kind of, you don't see, with the exception of a few bands, most of your major bands, they're going to go good 4, 5, 6 years in between albums. And that's just accepted as the industry standard today, really.
Yeah.
But the Black Album is interesting because it does mark a clear shift in the way they write songs. They are more, I suppose, more digestible, more marketable. The songs get
Verse,
shorter.
chorus, verse, chorus,
Absolutely.
solo, verse, chorus.
They're definitely kind of stripping it down, and they're following a formula at this point. And I remember hardcore Metallica fans, and I was one of them, were really upset about this album. There was a lot of criticism of the album, though they've gone soft, they've gone mainstream, they're just trying to fill stadiums, which of course they did.
Yes.
But
yes.
I always liked the album. I thought it was well produced. I mean, sad but true. When I put that on, I bought the LP. I stood in line at midnight for it to go on sale. I think I got the cassette and the album. And the album, putting that on and hearing Sad but True, how heavy that song was, to me, they'd not lost a step. And maybe that was because I was such a big Metallica fan. I recognize my own subjectivities, but I find it difficult to criticize that album. Yet there are many people who say, "Oh, this is, And Justice for All was the last great Metallica album. They've not done anything even close to that." I really disagree with that because the Black Album was really a strong album all the way through.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I would say that I would agree with the previous statement that And Justice for All was the greatest thing they ever did. But I would also agree that the Black Album is really good. I can remember listening to it and being shocked. But I mean, I'm sure we could look up dates, but Enter Sandman came out as a video, and it was a video, it seemed like, for a month before the actual album came out. So by then, there was this sort of, you're prepared for this sound, and it sounded good. It wasn't completely off the tracks. They weren't singing about, I think there's only one political song on the album, Don't Tread on Me.
That's right.
Which I always really liked that. I mean, I was okay with the slower songs. I mean, again, if you listen to the previous Metallica albums, you're prepared for some musicianship and acoustic guitars.
Right.
The thing that hurts the Black Album and is why I struggle to listen to it today is that it was worn out. I mean
that is true.
It became so mainstream, and they made so many videos that it's like listening to Beth, right? I don't want to hear that. I mean, Beth, great song for what it is. I don't want to hear it anymore, right?
And I feel that way about Led Zeppelin. I love them,
Yeah.
but I've just heard them so many times. I just can't. It's hard to listen to.
Blasphemy. No, no, but I'm that way with. I mean, it's just. Yeah, when I put on the Black Album, I'm just like, yeah, I've heard it enough. I
Right.
mean, it just, in the 91, 92, 93, because you had that, and then you had that huge, massive live binge and purge. Yeah, gosh, it was
But they had
just
some
too
songs
much.
that did not go mainstream that were like for Holier Than Thou was really fantastic. I think it's called The Struggle Within, Of Wolf and Man.
Wolf and Man.
There's some really good stuff on that album that didn't get a lot of airplay. And
Right.
for me, as you know, Court, knowing me, I tend to treasure those things that don't get popular because I feel like they're my own, And so those are the songs that I really enjoyed listening to because I was really tired of Unforgiven. Really got sick of that pretty quick.
Yeah.
Got pretty tired of that.
And I guess that's where I get really disappointed with the Black Album. Well, not the album itself, but the Bob Rock or management of the time, as they said, let's flood the market with every song. So one of the neat things about buying albums, because I grew up where people would just buy singles, and I was just like, buy the album, right? Because to me, albums, they fit together, they tell a story, they capture history. And so one of the neat things about buying an album is knowing the obscure tracks and saying, "Oh, what do you think?" So, imagine if the only song they released from it was "Enter Sandman," and we meet, and I say, "Oh, you're a Metallica fan? Well, what do you think about that whole Unforgiven song or Nothing Else Matters?" And then you could say, "Oh, I love that," or you could be like, "I don't know what you're talking about," right? And so it becomes sort of a gauge of how much does this person really know about Metallica, and so what kind of level can we discuss, right? Because if you're like, you don't know that, well, let's talk something else. So there's no real mystery, right? The song, one of my favorite song on the album was "Sad but True," and I was just like, oh, that was my sort of nugget. I was like, they'll never release that, but sure enough, they released the the little clip show from different concerts, and I'm like, and now you've ruined that because now it's on the freaking radio and MTV every 30 seconds.
Well, what I guess the reason that was frustrating to me is because for the first 3 albums, they were like a counterculture band. We loved them because they weren't popular, because there was no radio airplay. They were ours, right? This little group. I mean, they got more popular with Ride the Lightning and Master Puppets. They were definitely building a following, but when they put out the the one video, I mean, that exposed so many people to Metallica through MTV.
I mean, it was so popular they released a VHS of just the one video.
That's right.
And it was just like, that's a lot of money. And so they obviously were, making some money on that.
Yeah, and to me, as they became more accessible to the masses, they became less accessible to me.
Right.
Because, and I still love them. I've obviously seen them. I've seen them 7 times, 8 times, something like that, and continue to enjoy their music. But, we're definitely talking about the golden age of Metallica with these first albums. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the Black Album?
But yeah, so in terms of the Black Album, it's a great album. It for a long time, I mean, that's what we were playing in my little garage bands, but every song that we learned became a song that was released, and so it was at that point that I lost interest in Metallica because they just, I was burnt out on them.
Yeah, and I think that happens with a lot of the bands that we love, And I'd still go see them live if the tickets weren't $450, right? I would still go see them. But we can do another episode about how going to concerts has become cost prohibitive to some degree.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, the good thing about it is I looked into other music, and so I went looking for those other hidden Metallicas, and found some really good stuff that I know we'll talk about in terms of other bands.
Well, our next episode
Queensryche, you mentioned Queensryche earlier. Queensryche was huge at that time, and so there was a whole catalog of just epic Queensryche songs.
Yes, I'm sure we'll commit an episode to them. But next week, we are going to tackle Megadeth. It's kind of the logical progression from Metallica to Megadeth. So we will look at them next week. I just want to say that it's been really enjoyable doing this first inaugural episode of the Rock and Metal Profs. We hope that you've enjoyed the episode and that you will continue to join us. We're going to be streaming on all the major platforms. We will also have a Facebook page up and running here real soon if you would like to participate. And
send us messages, right? I mean, I know I send messages to bands and actors and stuff, and I'm like, they never see this. But do it.
In this case, Dr. Lewis and I are going to be managing the Facebook page, so we have no one else that will be doing this. We will be actually going on, seeing what you have to say, and we will do everything we can to bring in listener questions and listener comments and really try to make our listener base a part of the show moving forward.
And hopefully, I mean, we'll have guests from time to time, depending on, because we're not experts on everything, but
yes, we'll have some interesting guests moving forward. So for now, we want to thank you for listening to the Rock and Metal Props, and we will talk to you next week.